Hi, I'm Jim Raffle. This is the Jim and Shelby Show, all things print podcast. I'm joined as always by my co-host.
Shelby Sapusik. How are you today, Jim?
I'm great. And we have a guest this week. You want to introduce yourself?
You.
Hi, this is Clark Omholt, and I am the founder of TruHu.app, which we will be talking about in more detail. And I can give a little background in addition to that. So I've been in this color and print world for 20 plus years, originally with X-Rite, and then I launched my own company, SpectraFlow, which is an Epson reseller and a color consulting firm about 20 years ago. We specialize in what we call color critical workflows, either visual or print, and we've carved out a nice niche for ourselves in the fashion space. So we work with a lot of larger fashion retailers like Nordstrom and Abercrombie and Target and Kohl's and companies like that.
So you've had SpectraFlow for 20 years?
I have. It's been more than 20 years now.
Because I remember when I met you, we were still at X-Rite. So I guess we've known each other a while.
It's a while ago, isn't it? Yeah.
Time flies. So sorry, Shelby, for the trip down memory lane.
No, that's okay. I was just going to point out real quick before we get too far in. If you're looking for TruHu, it's TRUHU.app.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah.
And we will make sure that ends up in the show notes. So Clark, you reached out to me, I think via email. It's probably 3-4 months ago now, and as you were putting TruHu in the later beta testing, and I signed up, and I was quite frankly kind of blown away. If you do any monitor calibration, well, here's why. If you do any monitor calibration, let's say the more traditional way that everyone's familiar with, you get an X-Rite I1 profiler, you hang it on your monitor, you go through all the steps. Now I know how to do it all now, so it's no longer intimidating, but it still takes a while, and you got to kind of plan for it. And then I got a hold of TruHu, and I literally took 2 pictures of my screen, and I had a monitor profile that was good enough. And I'm not going to be the guy who says this is exactly the same as if I used my I1. I'll let you share that side of the argument. For me, when I looked at my monitor after I calibrated with TruHu, I was like, good enough. And so that really got me interested, because one of the things I figured out in this industry, and you too, is, well, go ahead. You were just talking about it before we came live. Monitor calibration is great if people do it, right?
Yeah, I think I was saying what's the biggest problem with monitor calibration? It's that almost no one does it. I ask around, and what percentage of people who have color critical workflows are actually calibrating their monitors on any kind of regular basis. And everyone I've talked to says it's definitely single digit, and it's probably low single digits, like 3% of people actually bother to do it. And then the question is why? And that's kind of the genesis of TruHu. And we asked ourselves, what are all the reasons people aren't doing it, and how can we address that?
And I think one of the things, so we just did some color training yesterday, and I remember when Shelby was going through using I1 Profiler, there's a box you can check for ADC, automatic display detection, I think. And she
ADC is automatic display control.
Thank you. And she was explaining that, some monitors have it, some monitors don't have it. And I think we're reaching the point where most of them have it, but in the cases of the ones that didn't and don't, you have to set some controls manually, which can be a little bit cumbersome. And I remember talking with you that you've gotten around some of that by building a database of pretty much every monitor on the market.
Yeah, so there's a number of hurdles that one has to overcome when doing a proper monitor calibration. This is true of whether you're using a colorimeter, or as in the case of TruHu, using your camera's phone. And so for colorimeters, they have filters that are optimized for various backlight technologies. If you don't match your filter to your backlight technology, you run the risk of metameric failure, basically getting bad measurements and getting a bad profile that results. So So if you go to your traditional colorimeter-based monitor calibrator, it's going to ask you along the way, what kind of backlight do you have? And that's one of the limitations of the existing solutions. Most people don't know what kind of backlight they have. And there's this kind of a deer in the headlights phenomenon. Your typical designer is like, what's my backlight? What's my gamma? I'm going to run the other way. And so what we decided to do is we found a database that contains basically all displays that are on the market and what kind of backlight technology they're using. So we load that up into the cloud, and during the calibration process with TruHu, we identify your model of display. We look up that database and we identify the backlight technology, and then we have lookup tables as opposed to filters, but the same idea. And then so we apply the right lookup table for your type of backlight technology. So that's one of the innovations we brought to this process.
So yeah, I mean, just so people know kind of how this works, you use your iPhone in my case, and you have an app on your iPhone and an app on your Mac in my case, and you start up the app on the Mac and then start up the app on the iPhone, and they essentially connect through the cloud, and you control most of it right from your iPhone.
Yeah, I use the analogy. It's like it's like a remote control for your TV, where your phone has taken over control of your desktop display, either the laptop, or if you have an attached external display, it works either way.
And you take two pictures. One's all grayscale, and one is color. And I actually noticed something yesterday that I'd never noticed. Right after the grayscale picture, you make changes to the monitor before you display the colors. I'd never noticed that before.
That's true. That the gray is doing our color temperature shift and also the gamma correction.
So you're kind of basically making a change halfway through, and I'm assuming that's part of your secret sauce, sort of. But
yeah, I think that's the standard strategy for monitor calibration, is to make some adjustments to color temperature prior to displaying the colors. So in that sense, we're following a pretty traditional approach. But one thing that's innovative is, if you've ever calibrated your monitor, it's a little bit tedious to watch it go through all those measurements, even if you use the smallest data set. And by using the camera, we can capture a bunch of measurements, a bunch of color squares, if you will, in a single capture of the camera. So we're able to get all the measurements we need, both gray and color, in a total of 2 photos, and that's the primary reason that it goes so fast.
So Shelby, as a designer, and I know that you do other things, but that's your background. Is that something that you feel like you'd be willing to use TruHu? Because you've watched me do it a few times. I'm not sure if you've gotten to play with it yourself, but does it look like something you'd be willing to do in order to get better color results in your design work?
Well, absolutely. But I think I'm a unique case, because while I grew up in graphic design, I have this color management, job now. So these technical things like using the I1 and I1 profiler and going through the process I went through in the class this week, I'm willing to do that, and I understand why. And but coming from a design background, I know designers who would not either have access to a spectrophotometer of that caliber, probably wouldn't understand the process behind it, and would want to have their monitors calibrated. And this would be a great solution for them. So for designers who aren't in color management like I am, I think this would be a phenomenal solution.
So I think we were just like the fact that there's a time advantage, there's an ease advantage. I threw out the good enough analogy for accuracy. Do you have any numbers? Have you guys done any evaluation of your quote unquote accuracy compared to other methods?
We have so all of our lookup tables, which is kind of the core technology inside of TruHu. We're basically creating a unique lookup table for every backlight iPhone combination. So the camera in the iPhone 12 is different than the camera in the iPhone 7. We have a lookup table for each of those, and all the measurements that were done for those lookup tables were done with the spectrophotometer, which is a more robust way of measuring color than a colorimeter. And so we have good spectral measurements, and we've had basically parameters that we're saying, if we'll build the profile with TruHu, we'll build a profile with the spectro. If the parameters exceed a certain delta E value, then we need to retweak our lookup table. So we went through this kind of iterative process to make sure that we were staying within a certain tolerance of what the spectrophotometer was giving back. And is TruHu as good as the profile you're going to get with the colorimeter? I kind of agree with your expression. Good enough is probably the right way to view it. You're getting yourself into the area where you need to be with very little time expense, and the cost is much lower as well. The other thing I'll mention about colorimeters is these filters on the colorimeters age over time, and the colorimeter loses its accuracy. So if you have a 3-year-old colorimeter, you might not be able to trust how accurate it is. Anyways. And then, as we talked about earlier, if you choose the wrong backlight technology, like, I don't know, I think I have a CCFL and it's not a CCFL, then you run the risk of getting a bad calibration as well. So I'd like to think that the TruHu calibration is comparable in quality to that what you get with a colorimeter. But I wouldn't say if you own a spectrophotometer you should go out and buy TruHu for a superior result. That's our target market is really big bang for the buck and the amount of time put in, as opposed to reaching the ultimate degree of technological perfection.
Sure. So I kind of alluded to who the perfect customer is with my question to Shelby. Who do you view your perfect customer as?
It's the 95% of the people who are doing color critical workflows who aren't currently calibrating. So that would be photographers, designers are the two biggest categories that we see who are adopting it. Videographers are maybe a subset of designers, but there's a lot of like YouTube creators out there that care about color. Interestingly, we're talking to some folks about gamers. There's a lot of gamers who care about not only color, but gamma or contrast accuracy. And shouldn't say accuracy, they want to optimize. So the gamers don't necessarily care about it being accurate, but they want to optimize for their gaming environments. That's another target. And then the big home run for us that we hope to get to achieve down the road is for e-commerce, where Joe Blow consumer, when they're at target.com, can click on a button that says TruHu your screen, and it's free to them, and they download it, and so when they're getting ready to buy that tan shirt, they're actually seeing the color correctly, and then Target doesn't have to worry about as many returns, which is a big deal for e-commerce. So that's the long-term goal. But currently, we're really focusing on people who are color professionals.
So I want to just kind of talk about mobile apps in general. Unless there's if there's anything you want to throw in about TruHu, I'll leave some time for you at the end. But in the last couple of weeks, it's just really been we've been going mobile for a long time. During the last few years, when we had the pandemic and such, we spent some time developing our own mobile app, which works with a Bluetooth battery powered spectrophotometer and allows people to do color verification, et cetera, et cetera. And then the cool thing is the developer who did that for us, he's also written his own little app, and ours is currently free, but that it won't stay that way. It's just free now until we figure out what we're going to do with it. And then he developed a little app called Seeing Color that does like profile analysis, and you can connect the instrument and take a measurement and see if your spot color's in gamut. And his is like $5.99. So it's the same. I know yours is $29.99, but $5.99, $29.99. It's really all, to me, that's all the same in the App Store. They're basically momentary decisions. I'm not going to think, I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it, and it's not going to be about the price. And so 2 weeks ago, we're on site with a customer, and I was showing him the Seeing Color app, and he's like, grabs his phone and he goes, "Oh, I'll pay for that myself." And it's like, and so I see a tremendous growth in color software that is app based because of the price point. I think we've locked out so many people for several decades because high-end, because really what you're doing is high-end color. What Seeing Color is doing is high-end color software. What we're doing with Spec Check is kind of high-end as well. And we've always locked people out and said, oh, well, if you want that, it's going to be 1,000 or 1,500 or 5,000, whatever it is. And all of a sudden we're saying, no, give us a few bucks a year, and it's like, I think it's going to change. Do you see that too?
Yeah, well, you reminded me of an old expression photographers use, which is, what's the best camera? You ask a photographer and they say, the one I have with me. And if we transfer it to our world, what's the best instrument? The one that's in your pocket. And these color emitters or spectros, they're wonderful, great technology, but they're not super convenient. They get put in a drawer, they get lost. Connectivity is an issue. It's all USB-B based, and the latest Apple laptops are USB-C, so you got to get a dongle. With something that's wireless like TruHu, you don't have to worry about those connectivity issues. So I would say that you need an instrument to do a decent monitor calibration. So we're trying to minimize the barriers to having a decent instrument, and we know the instrument that everyone has is their mobile phone.
Excellent.
Well, one last thing I'll add, that this is a way that TruHu has departed from the traditional approach, and a conscious decision we made is, I'm sure Shelby, when you go through the monitor calibration, the default setting for luminance on the apps that are out there is 120 candelas per meter squared, or 120 nits.
Yes.
That's like an ISO standard. And when I'm on site working with my clients and we use the defaults, they're like, oh, my screen's too dark. This thing sucks. I don't like monitor calibration. It's a small thing because they can change it easily enough. But guess what? 90% of the people don't change from the defaults. And it really, it taints their experience a little bit. So we at TruHu said, you know what, we're going to trust our customers to have their displays set to the right brightness already. And it's one less step you have to worry about, and it just makes the whole experience a little bit more user friendly. So
I have definitely run into that issue, especially if the person who's working on that monitor all the time, that computer, is sitting right beside me when I'm doing the calibration, because when you make that profile and you set that profile, there's a flip. And if you're sitting right there watching it, you can see it go from that bright white that you get out of the box, which isn't how we see it all. And it makes the screen appear, I don't know, a little bit more dull. It's duller, it's a little bit more yellow, and they freak out. But if they're not watching me do it and they come back when I'm finished, they're like, oh, this is so much easier on my eyes. And what did you do? And they don't even notice,
That's a fair point. I would add that in my experience, is like, I'm going to distinguish between photographers and designers. Photographers, they kind of understand light and color in a more sophisticated way, and they're usually working in a somewhat dimmed environment. Designers, not so much. They like looking out the window at the trees. There's a fair amount of ambient light. The 120 is not designed for a typical design environment. And modern era displays, you can go up to 200, 250 candelas, no worries. And that's what they want. And so by default, these other applications are kind of, I don't think, are serving their users, particularly the less technically sophisticated users, that well. And we're saying, hey, we trust your eyes on brightness. We're just going to get the color right for you.
All right. So we're going to start wrapping up here. Shelby, did you have any last minute questions, or?
I have just one question. Since your application is, it's an app. One thing that people, I think, get scared of with apps is like, oh, look, this app is free, and they download it. Well, if you want it to actually work with all the features that we're advertising, you need to buy this at $5.99 and this at $6.99, whatever. Yours is $29.99 per year, and all the features are included. Is that correct?
That is true. And you can also download it and try it for free from our website, TruHu.app, as you discussed earlier, and it just simply won't allow you to save your profile, but you'll be able to go through the experience and understand how it works. But you have to subscribe if you want to save the profile. And some people say, hey, why are you charging an annual fee? But the fact of the matter is that there's new phones and displays coming out all the time, and we have to create new lookup tables to support that. And so when you got your iPhone 15 next year, you're going to be glad TruHu is supporting it.
So yeah, as soon as the 15's come out, I'll drop my 14 and go get a 15.
Yeah.
Oh, did I say that out loud?
Again,
Again. So we are going to be at a couple trade shows and events. So if you are watching or listening and you want to know more about TruHu, we don't sell it, but I have it. Clark's been kind enough to give me a free year since I beta tested. And so in return, if you see us somewhere and you want me to demonstrate TruHu and I happen to have my Mac along and my phone, I would be happy to show it to you because it only takes a few minutes. And so, yeah, if you're going to be at UV Energize next month in Nashville or Printing United in October in Atlanta or any place else you run into us and you want to, see it firsthand, just let me know and we'll show it to you. So,
yeah, I should probably mention that it's iPhone, Mac only at the moment. We're just starting our Windows development project, which we expect to have completed by the end of the year. And then we'll probably move to Android next year. So sorry that Android is following, but we have to start somewhere.
But so it is Apple only, but I've got an EZO over here. It's an old one, but I used it on that too, which is connected to my Mac. And like, it's cool because now I can drag things back and forth and it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And it's so fast. I mean, that's the neat thing and it's the $29.99 covers both monitors. So
yeah, we had one beta tester who was a videographer. He had 5 displays in his environment and it was driving him nuts because they were all so different. He said, I just calibrated them all with TruHu and now they're all, I didn't ask him if they're matching perfectly, but he said, they're all matching. It's so much better than before. And that's our use.
I like the good enough analogy. We're gonna have to stick with that. So,
well, I like it too, just from a design perspective. One thing I teach my classes, especially when I get designers in who don't really know that much about printing, they just think, oh, here's what I have on my screen. I'm going to send it over there and somebody's going to be able to print it. And so I say to them, so how many designers do you have on staff? And they're 5, 6, 12. And so y'all work on different computers? Yes. Do you do file sharing? Yes. Do you think all your monitors look the same? Oh, maybe that's why we need to do it. And the light bulbs go off,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll mention that, part of my work with SpectraFlow, we do a lot of on-site color consulting like you do. And, having a calibrated monitor is important, but it's not sufficient for a good color experience. Obviously you want if you're using a printer, you want that profile as well, but you also have to have your color settings in, let's say, Adobe properly set, all kinds of stuff. So we've kind of been addressing that by putting together a blog on the TruHu website. So there's one about how to set your color settings at Adobe, how long should your display be on before you calibrate, all these kind of things that are related to getting good color, because we recognize the monitor calibration is necessary, but it's not necessarily sufficient.
But it's a piece to the color management puzzle.
Yeah. So we're trying to add an information educational part to kind of make it more of a solution, not just a product, I suppose.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Clark. Any last words from you?
No, it was great catching up with both you guys, and this was fun for me. Thank you.
Does TruHu have any social media if people wanted to follow you?
Yeah, we have Facebook, and we're on Instagram, and we're even doing some stuff with TikTok. I'm happily clueless about all this stuff, but I have a marketing organization that I work with that helps me maintain that kind of stuff. So we're out there on social media, but I think the presence is pretty minimal. But you're welcome to go out there and place. If we get a comment on Facebook or Instagram, we respond to it, and that's what kind of builds up our social media presence.
Okay. Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. We will have another podcast soon, hopefully in a couple weeks. And until then, thanks for joining.